Hello everyone, welcome back to Leeton. My name's Jace and today's video is a quick video really, and it's all about wrapping the garden up because the next couple of nights, 2 or 3 nights, are going to be a bit chilly. And tonight, in the very early hours of tomorrow morning, we're going to have 3-4 hours where they're forecasting 1 degree. And that's quite chilly. You know, we're definitely going to get a frost. So got a few things that I'm going to sort out and wrap up. Some things probably I don't have to, but I will anyway, because it's better to be safe than sorry. And if the Met Office has got the forecast wrong, you know, a couple of degrees, we're then talking minus figures, and I don't want to take that risk. So I'm just gonna short video on how I'm gonna wrap up the garden for the next few nights, and then at the weekend it's going to warm up again. So hopefully this is the last round of frosty nights. Okay, so the first thing I want to sort out are my new potatoes that are now out of the ground, or out of the compost in the pots. And as you can see, I've already wrapped them up. I did this yesterday because we were getting down to about 4 degrees last night, so I took that precaution. But I want to do something a little bit better for the next few nights with it being colder still. And that is because you can see that the dew and any rain that we're getting is forming pools of water in the polythene, and with it getting down so cold, that could then freeze, and then that is sat, there's a block of ice then sat on top of the leaves of the potato plants, and it's also adding weight and it's squashing the leaves down, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to unwrap these. And then I've got a piece of rusty old angle iron that I'd found lying around in the garden. And what I'm going to do is put a plant pot on top of that, so that the sharp edges of the steel don't go through the polythene. So what that's going to do now is allow the water to run off. And the other thing that's worth noting here with fleece, polythene, if the leaves are actually touching it, then they can still get nipped by frost with fleece and polythene. So just bear that in mind if you're covering things up and it's going to be really cold in your area. I prefer to try and keep the fleece off the leaves if I can. Now down there you see I've got broad beans covered. I'm not actually concerned about the broad beans. They're good down to about -10, but I also have some lettuce in there, so that's why that fleece is on there. and the fleece is touching the broad bean leaves, but I'm not worried about that. So that's the potatoes sorted out. None of my other potatoes have come out of the ground yet, so I'm not worried about those. So these are the leeks I planted last week, and leeks are pretty tough, pretty resilient to cold weather, but they are young. They have only just been put in, and I've got the ability to give them some protection, so why not? So I'm just going to cut a piece of fleece to suit. And again, I'm just using the plant pot method on a stick to keep the fleece off the leaves. Now the reality is, if your leaf is just touching the fleece a bit and it does get a little bit nipped by frost, that probably won't kill the plant. It might just kill the one leaf. But when you're talking about small leeks that might only have 1 or 2 leaves, that could be an issue. So that's why I'm doing that, and that will protect them for the next few nights, no problem. So if you watched the video the other day, I sowed some carrot seeds here, and they're not coming through the soil at all. You know, the actual leaves aren't going to get nipped by any frost, but I do want to try and keep the warmth in the soil a bit if I can, and I want to stop the frost from settling on the soil where I've sown the seeds. So what I'm going to do is get a compost bag and cut it. Just lay that out on top of the soil, and any sunshine that we get in the day, because that's black, it will transmit a little bit of heat back to the soil that's lost on a night, and a few days time and I can take that away. So all the parsnips that are up and out of the ground I've covered with my half pop bottle technique, and I'll just leave them there now for a few days while we have these cold nights that are coming. So over here, this is the kale that I planted the other day. I've covered the ones up with half pot bottles that are small enough to be covered. The other two I'm just going to leave. Kale's pretty hardy, a lot of shelter here with this fence, the compost bin, etc. They'll probably be okay. We forecast 1 degree, not minus figures, so they're probably going to be okay. But I've hedged my bets, covered some and left some. And I've done exactly the same here with the spinach. The ones that are small enough to cover with a half pop bottle I have, and the ones that are too big I'm going to leave. Again, pretty hardy, and at 1 degree hopefully they'll be okay. If not, I've hedged my bets and I've still got over half of my crop protected. Now the brassicas that are in here, this garden mesh, this EnviroMesh type material, is actually quite a good frost protector, and I think it's just purely because the holes are so small that any moisture forms on the mesh and then freezes on the mesh. It doesn't actually get down to the plants inside, but I'm not going to take that chance. And even though brassicas are very hardy, they're still young plants. I don't have any spares at the moment, so I'm going to put some fleece over this as a double whammy, double protection, because they take a while to grow. I haven't got spares. A lot of time and effort's gone into getting them this far, so I'm going to wrap these up. So these are some young onions that I planted out last week, and that isn't perfect by any means, but I think onions are pretty hardy. I think they'll be fine with that extra bit of protection. They've got the cover of the fence as well. The ones further back there I'm really not concerned about. They've already been through minus temperatures for weeks this last winter, so they're going to be absolutely fine. I'll get a bit more fleece in a minute and just finish this off, this last bit, but that will help those onions the next few nights. So the main crop potatoes I put in these pots, not really concerned about them because they haven't come through yet, and we're not actually forecast to get to freezing or below freezing, and if we do, it should only be for an hour or so. That isn't going to be enough to freeze these pots. If we were looking at minus temperatures night after night after night for several nights or a week, I'd be taking these inside, because what you don't want is the compost to freeze solid. That will kill the potatoes. Same for the ones that are in the ground. Nothing's coming through yet. The Monch 2, the peas, they've already been through some pretty cold temperatures. They're fairly hardy, so I'm going to leave those. Same with the garlic in this bed, and the red onions. I think they're going to be absolutely fine as well. They're a decent size. I've got a few leaves on each one now. I don't think there'll be any issues with those at sort of 1 degree. I might be wrong, we'll find out, but I think they'll be fine. So we have covered up the baby leeks, the beetroot and the spring onions are covered, the broad beans are covered, but not really for the broad beans, it's more to protect the lettuce that is also planted in that bed. The parsnips are covered, the carrot seeds are covered, the salad bed is covered. New potatoes are sorted out so that water can't sit on top of the plants and then potentially freeze into a block of ice and transmit that cold through the polythene onto the plants. Brassicas are sorted out. They're going to be perfectly fine in there at 1 degree or freezing even. The kale at the far end is sorted out. The spinach is sorted out. Hedge my bets on both of those. They're both fairly hardy. I think they'll be fine anyway without any protection, but I've covered the smaller ones. I've covered the young onions that I've put out. The older ones I'm not worried about. Rhubarb I'm not worried about. All these plants here have been through all of those really cold snaps that we had last year, so they're going to be fine. So I think that's everything I've got out here sorted. I need to move those spare brassicas just to protect those. Might just put those in the shed for tonight. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed that real quick video on what I'm doing to wrap up my garden for these few cold nights that we're going to get this week. Only really one cold night so far that's forecast, and that's tonight. That's 1 degree in my area, but as I've said, if they've got that wrong and it slips below freezing, that's a different story then, you know. So don't take that chance. Don't trust the forecast 100%. Use it, read it, listen to it, take it with a pinch of salt, and then go a bit extra. Go some belt and braces over what you think the forecast is. Because after all this work from January to now, sowing seeds, bringing them on, keeping them indoors, etc, 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 hardening off, you don't want to be losing plants now, not at this stage. So get outside when you get home from work, get out, go to the garden centre on the way home, buy some fleece, buy some mesh, buy some polythene, whatever it is that you need, and get your plants wrapped up so you don't lose them. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please do, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.